If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The way we think about AI, as you suggested 3 years ago, completely different than how we think about it today. Imagine 3 years from now. So, I mean, you have to embrace that trajectory, which is just, it's on rocket fuel. I mean, it's just, you have to do it. No, you can't do it, Sally. You gotta keep staying. And that's hard for people.
Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. I am absolutely delighted, and hopefully my guest is too, that I finally got Dr. Steve Andriole on my podcast. You are one of my professors at Villanova, somebody who really makes us think in ways that we didn't expect necessarily when we started taking your classes. You have a very different teaching style than a lot of the professors we've had. Of course, you've been teaching for over 23 years. So I want to thank you for that first and foremost. But you have such a great insight from being the director of Cybernetics Technology Office at DARPA, early days of the internet, helped seeding MIT's Media Lab, crisis warning system output appearing in President Reagan's daily briefing book, helping shape policy, to all of the other things that you've done to help people think about investing, to helping figure out what to invest in, to writing multiple books, being a thought leader in so many areas. I can't even, share all of the different things that you've done, Dr. A. So thank you for being here.
So don't. Because it makes me feel old, but don't.
Yeah, so you are so excited when you come into class to share with us the different things that are going on in generative AI and thinking through agentic AI and thinking about what the future looks like, to the point where you've told us you're going to be replaced. You're creating your digital twin. And your most recent book, right, is the Startup Declassified Insider's Playbook. Long title, but something that you think is really important for us all to discuss. So I'd love for you to share anything else in your journey that you want to highlight that got you to this point today, because this is going to be a really interesting conversation and one I'm really looking forward to.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the introduction, even if it did make me feel a little old. Actually, I want to talk about sort of emerging tech and primarily AI. And again, thank you for the comments about the teaching style. I mean, these are graduate students, for crying out loud. I mean, so my expectations are pretty high about the insights and the thoughts and the ability to respond to questions like, what do you think? I mean, depending on your audience or this because you're a professional educator as well, you tailor your message and your style to the audience. And, my assumption is that graduate students are really smart. And I also assume that when it comes to AI, they should be kind of concerned, not worried, although maybe they should be. We'll get into that. But I think they should be concerned and therefore trying to dig into this. It's an onion. You peel it back and there's a lot there with AI. So we'll get into that. You mentioned my most recent book, Startups Declassified. That's a book that's based on a lot of experiences I had with entrepreneurs and startups, including my own and things like that. But the book that has me more excited is the book that's in production now, which is called How Executives Should Think About AI. And that also, I wrote that book right after startups came out, because I thought, working with companies, I don't really see an awareness, the kind of awareness I would like to have seen or like to see going forward about AI. So there's a chapter in the book that talks about the impact it will have, and it's significant. And, I just think that we're way, way underestimating the impact of this technology. And I don't have all the answers about what's going to happen when AI replaces so many knowledge workers, which it absolutely will do. I mean, I'm sure I would get people that say, oh, he's overstating that, or, he's completely wrong about that. It'll be a gradual introduction. We'll be able to manage this. We'll be able to do our due diligence around the adoption of this technology. I'll strongly push back and say, no. I mean, I've seen emerging technologies hit. I mean, I talked to some people at DARPA that were involved in literally creating the internet, right? Literally. And I asked them, so what do you think? Was the internet, back in 97, 98, 99, 2000, more significant in terms of business models than the internet, creation of that itself? Or is it generative AI? What do you think? And they all said generative AI. So they're basically saying that, what we did with the internet way back when, and then when the internet exploded as the World Wide Web, right? That no, this is more important. And I'm in that camp. I think it's absolutely more important. And I don't think it's necessarily more complicated. And I mean, it's not that difficult to understand in the same sense that the internet was either. I mean, even though I had people asking me, venture capitalists actually asking me who were investing in internet, what's the internet? I mean, my head would explode after each one of those meetings. But I think that we're just underestimating the impact. And I think, if you look across business models, functions, sub-processes, I don't see a whole lot that's immune. So, I get some pushback on that, but I will say that over the past 6 months or so, and maybe it's because of CNBC, I don't know, they talk about it constantly, as you know. I will say that from what I read and the people I talk to, there's a trend moving toward, this is probably going to be more impactful than we think. And maybe we should start getting ready. So, yeah.
Well, and we've talked about this, teaching digital media, right? One of my classes, I completely changed some of the things, right? Because the program is pretty laid out. You have your readings, you have your videos, all the assignments. My time is 90 minutes a week with my students. But I changed some of the assignments. And for the first time ever, I got and this isn't even my education podcast, but I got a scathing review from somebody who didn't want to learn about artificial intelligence or generative AI, didn't want to think about it in the context of a class that's about digital advertising and media buying, which can be completely controlled now. We don't even need to do anything. We don't even have to create our own assets. We can just say, here's our brand. Here's the goal that we're trying to achieve. Here's a budget, and go. And said, oh, this should have been called Surprise AI class. I'm like, there's not a world that exists in the digital landscape that doesn't involve generative AI. And so it's shocking to me that a lot of my students are here with it. They want to learn. They understand. Maybe they don't understand to the breadth and depths, of course, that you do, that we're going to discuss today. But there are still people who naysay who are in this field.
I know. Well, so I'll ask you, even though the podcast is, you're supposed to be asking me, why do you think that is? Honestly, I mean, I'm asking this sincerely because I'm kind of perplexed. I mean, marketing, seriously? I mean, if you want to talk about a discipline in the in the crosshairs, that's it. And so why do you think that's the case?
Yeah, well, I think when they think about an AI world, they think about Terminator, RoboCop, things like that. They're not thinking about the practical applications and the cost savings businesses are looking at already and going to be looking at even further, which means that their jobs will be gone. Or if they have that subject matter expertise, that they can say, hey, I'm an expert and I can help manage this all these AI processes, and I should be the one you keep, right? And so I think it's a lot of fear. I think it's a lot of misinformation on their side. And people just want to stick their heads in the sand. And speaking about the internet, though, even with COVID, people who were mom and pop shops who didn't have great websites, maybe had a single page up, had to move to the digital era 7 years faster than we had anticipated, in the world of entrepreneurs and business. So it's kind of the same thing of everybody needs to know this now. They should at least be getting their feet wet and starting to use tools. And because it is getting to the point where it's too late. It's no longer just early adoption.
I agree. And you said something which I think is really important for all of us to understand, including the people that may be a little bit skeptical about AI, or, maybe we can slow down the adoption. You said about cost savings. And one of the things that I see in companies is that the push is coming, and this is interesting to me, from boards of directors. So, you do a quarterly board report and you have a meeting and all of that, and you go to fly to a nice place. And then invariably somebody says, in fact, if you read the earnings reports and the Q&A with the analysts, you'll see that they increasingly are asking about AI. What's your AI strategy? And that sinks in. And then, of course, the boards of directors are saying, well, what's our AI strategy? And most importantly, they're thinking about this from the perspective of how much money can we save?
Yeah.
And what I find interesting about that kind of pressure, that's in a public company, that's meaningful because they're going to hold the CEO and the senior management team accountable. And so they're almost like they have no choice, even though they may want to be a little slow with this. They had no choice because now the chairperson of the board is saying something like, well, why aren't we investing this to save some money? Or second stage is revenue generation, right? So the first step with all these companies, and we have lots of data on this, first step with all these companies is internal efficiencies. Mm-hmm. So let's use AI to improve our efficiencies internally. And then the phase 2 is, hey, how can we use this to maybe enhance our products and services and make more money? We can charge them more money if we offer them, for example, a really cool user-computer interface. Kind of a silly application, but you get the point. I think that's, so even if you're in the camp that says, oh, this isn't going to happen so fast, be careful because your board is coming for you and they're coming for you through the CEO and the senior management team. Bottom line, you have no choice. You just have no choice. And we could shift very quickly to career management.
Yeah.
So what does this mean for people's professional careers? You better get on that. You better understand this because remember the board of directors and the CEO, senior management team, they're coming for you because they want to save money and make money eventually with AI. And then meanwhile, where do you fit? And if you take the position that, I'll learn about this in due course, or, maybe I'll take a quick course or here and there, you're going to lose this game. You could be, not everyone, but plumbers are probably safe, but you could be one of these people whose jobs are eliminated. And I think there's a lot more to my earlier point. I think it's a longer list than we think.
Yeah.
And sooner and much sooner.
Well, and I'm curious about that. I know that for entrepreneurs and very small businesses, which are over 8 million in the United States, there are a lot of institutions and organizations, inner city entrepreneurs, even the Intuit ecosystem that are starting to incorporate agentic AI and chatbots and talk about, hey, how are you as a small business owner using AI? And I feel like that conversation is still so limited. And so even whether you're an enterprise solution, you're a big organization, you're well-funded, or you're looking for that funding, or you're a small organization, this is almost a level set for everybody.
Absolutely. Again, so, I'm a little surprised that there's not more companies reaching out for education about this. And you can't say education, you have to say awareness, because executives don't like the idea of you coming in to educate them about anything. You certainly can't say training, but it's an awareness. I'm sort of surprised that this isn't like another tsunami that's teach me about this without using the word teach. I need to know about this like yesterday. And I think that's maybe coming. The other variable, in addition to the boardroom pressure, is the competition. So if your competition is making lots of noise about using AI, and you can also, track their calls, with their analysts, you'll see it. And then, of course, their own press releases. So this whole idea of competitive intelligence becomes really important for companies, especially if they're unwilling. And then the third piece is your revenue is falling for whatever reason, right? That's the third gun to your head. So it's like, then you start, what can I do to help? Does this AI think maybe can help me? That kind of stuff. I mean, I think it's going to happen, but I'm a lot surprised actually that we have to resort to guns to the head as opposed to let me proactively explore this. So what I tell companies is, look, you may be skeptical, just go build some prototypes. I mean, just take a function that costs you a lot of money and time, right? What we talk about in class as a broken process, and fix it. And if you can't fix it with one of these tools, then move on to the next one. But what if you can?
Yeah.
What if you can save a lot of time and money? And then you go to the next one, the same thing happens. And in my experience, that's what happens.
Well, and that's what really fascinates me is in our class, when people are doing this business process modeling, not as intense as we did last semester, but still, mine will probably be a little more intense maybe than some of the others, just because as I'm a small business entrepreneur as well, right? So I don't have a huge board that I have to speak to, or a lot of levels of management. But the fact that even something as simple as using AI presentation templates can be such a huge time and cost savings for a large organization. These things that we think of as very simple, but they actually can do a lot and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Well, I think, yes, no question about that. But I think that many companies have not confronted the processes in their own companies that are the most inefficient. So many, many times in my career, I go into a company and I'll say, do you have a process inventory here? And they'll say, what are you talking about? I'll say, well, just a list of the key processes. Say your supply chain, your product development, you're into PR. I don't care what it is. Have you exploded those processes to understand the steps you need to take to be successful with product development or whatever it may be? And they go, no. I know, well, how do you know if they're any good? Well, we have good people. And I'll say, well, are you sure? Right? So you can, that's when you're having lunch with the CEO off-site somewhere, and you can say, are you sure you have good people? I mean, do you even, and the answer is, well, I think they're good. Well, they may not be. So why don't we go back and look at the processes, the key processes they're responsible for, like new product development, which is a big one. And well, how many new products have you had over the past 5 years? How about your competition? Which technology have you used? And what you almost invariably find is that the people really aren't that good. I hate to say that, and then of course, well, where's the process modeling? And then, well, why don't we take a look at this and take a look at, back to process mining. Let's take a look at maybe how it could be better. Maybe you can improve it. Maybe you can reinvent it, reimagine it, or maybe automate it. And they go, oh, let's just pick one and we'll try it. And then you do it and they go, first question, what did this cost me? How much did it cost me to do this prototype, this demonstration prototype? And then you say, well, 2 or 3 people did this in an afternoon. With what tool? Well, the tool is basically free, a little costly. Then there's a real moment, wait a minute, run this whole thing by me again. You just took a broken process that maybe should have been identified as that before, and you fixed it, improved it, and maybe automated it with a tool that was kind of free, with a couple of people playing around, which what you would usually call, this is interesting, which you might call in a kind of critical way, a science project. These are the people the people in companies that were doing these science that couldn't possibly be relevant, right? And they go, no, it's not a science project. It will scale. Key word. It will scale. And they go, no. Well, let's do phase 2 and see if it scales. So it's not just like, we're going to just wash you with AI. It's these steps, one by one. And start small, but I would never recommend starting with a process that's really strong, because there's no impact. And that's okay. It's great to be able to identify a bunch of strong processes that need no improvement, but we both know that that's not the case in most companies.
It makes me think of, I have a friend who works on taxonomy and was working for one of the biggest social media firms, and it's constantly broken, the data labeling and how ads get served to people, and even words that can or can't be used or get flagged, even if they're words that should be associated with this product, right? Because they're misused by other people, perhaps. And the number of times she told me that she had to explain to her director and her director's director and the VP and the next VP what they actually did in her division, because none of them, they were just being moved around, but none of them actually could implement what she was doing. None of them knew how to do any of it. And I think a lot of those people are probably afraid of for their jobs, their livelihoods, even though they work for organizations that are trying to be the AI leaders now as well. But I think once that side catches up, there's going to be a major, major shift, and there's going to be a lot of people having existential crises because they don't know what to do next.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand. through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRANGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Yeah, I agree. One of the sad things about business strategy and even the tactics are that until it gets really painful, few things actually change. And, we've both seen that in our careers. And there's no better time to get someone's attention than when someone's failing. And they look around, well, you have any ideas? Because if it ain't broke, don't fix it phenomenon is so powerful. I mean, I look at higher education and I think, if you didn't have the degree credential, I don't know what you're charging and what the value prop is, because geez, it's, the Chronicle of Higher Education keeps publishing these articles, which is amazing to me, about how students, when they graduate, they actually say, I just read one yesterday, we didn't learn anything. What do you mean you didn't learn anything? We didn't learn anything. And I'm like, okay, well, that's an exaggeration. Then you go on and read the article and it's like, well, maybe it's not an exaggeration. So, I think that's an area where if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, I don't see higher ed responding to this at all. And the reason why that's important, not because I can be replaced, I can't wait to become an avatar. I mean, you know that, right? We start the class with being an avatar with a hologram. So the combination, here it is, combination of me as an avatar with a hologram. So I'm not even there. It's a hologram of my avatar back-ended with the chatbots, right? So like, ask me anything. And then a small language model on the side, which has the course details. So you can ask me anything about the course and anything about anything, right? So when I go back to higher ed, yeah, I can be replaced that way. But more importantly, we have a responsibility to prepare our students to be competitive in the job market, right? And so I think, and again, you hit these walls of, well, I've been teaching marketing this way for years.
Yeah.
Or accounting or auditing or, my God, are you serious? Auditing? I mean, sure, insurance. I mean, we can pick 4 or 5 areas about which none of us would disagree that they're gone. Whether it's 3 years, 5 years, it's not 7 or 10. It's coming faster than that because, again, back to that operating premise, they want to save money, right? So people want to save money. So why would you hire, we were in class this week and somebody, I forget who it was Tara, said, we pay this company to do this, right? To build those presentations, a fortune, as opposed to giving it to Gamma or Beautiful AI or Presentations AI, or to Notebook LM to summarize data. I mean, on and on. I'm thinking, well, how long is it going to last when people don't know about these things? So higher ed, I think, is in the crosshairs, and I think they have a responsibility to respond to this. And, it's...
Yeah, I completely agree.
You're in education. Tell me about it.
It's a frustration point that I'm seeing a lot because you thrive on the fact that your undergrad students are using technology to create podcasts and create different ways of learning modalities that fit with their needs right now, knowing that they have much shorter attention spans. They're going to be looking at multiple screens. Time is very truncated. So finding new ways, and I think that's part of what we have to do is continue finding and refining short bits of information and ways to do things and ways to engage and actually get people to take action versus living in theory. And I see a lot of frustration with other professors who teach undergrad and grad because they don't know how to teach using AI tools. They don't know how to incorporate them into their courses. And they're seeing that students are just using chat to write papers and not really showing up for class or doing other things. And that's not an effective use. I mean, that's the argument against higher education. And that's, I think, one of the big issues is that there is such a place for higher education. And I see so many of my students who are engaged and they're stacking master's degrees because they know they don't just want a certification in something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they maybe get this degree and then they realize, oh, I really also want to know about this because of the exact area of specialization I'm going to get into. But a lot of higher education is floundering. I think there's going to be a lot of going back to existential crises, right? It's not just for the employees who are going to lose these cushy jobs, but it's also for academia and how many universities are going to be left and which ones are going to really step up.
I couldn't agree more. Academia's initial approach to AI was to ban it.
Yeah.
And to say nobody's allowed to use it, which of course makes everybody want to use it. I mean, it's like nobody ever raised a child. So it's like, right? So it's like, come on, just, So my approach has been just the opposite. My approach has been, I require you, not want you. It's required in my syllabus. You must use these tools. You have to identify where you use the tools. And I don't care how you respond to my questions, my exams. I don't care. Be as creative. You left out, you mentioned podcasts. How about the musical albums?
Right.
They write me 10 songs. The one song I mentioned before is called the Prompt Engineering Blues. I mean, it's like, who comes up with this stuff? They do it in their sleep. And I think we should be encouraged. I do encourage it, but what they're thinking is, and they're doing internships and so they understand there's a connection. So, but they also know that the companies are reluctant and all that sort of thing, like their universities, but they're already thinking outside the box. Now they can because they're undergraduates. They've never been constrained inside a corporate environment that's screaming about security, legitimate concerns, and all the rest of it. So, I mean, if I get a regular sort of attachment, a Word doc, for an assignment, that's unusual, because I tell them you can do that, but, it's not very, I'm getting avatars like crazy,
Oh, nice.
Oh, student avatars like crazy. And so it's like wonderful. And they're talking about, God knows what they're talking about. One of my students, they had to do individual presentations, loaded up the avatar and left and got coffee. And the avatar made the presentation. I'm like, fabulous, why'd you come back? It was just so good. So, I mean, and they're also very good. This is an important point that we're making in general about sort of the awareness and issues there. The younger you are, the less scared you are about pounding keys or using any of these devices. You just try it. You don't care. Whereas the older you are, you sort of, am I going to break this? I'm not, how complicated is this? I mean, and when I make my students do the presentations, and at first they were reluctant to tell me this. And I would say to them, well, how long did it take you to learn this tool? Building an agent, agentic AI, build an agent, build a custom GPT, right? And they do it and they go, they don't want to tell me that it took them 2 hours.
2 hours is nothing.
Of course
to learn
not.
a new skill?
No, of course not. What they want, that they think I want to hear, that they invested 2 weeks into this. They think that if I hear it's 2 hours, I'll think, well, you didn't work very hard, therefore your grade shouldn't be very high. And when they tell me 2 hours, I go, why did it take you so long? And I applaud that. And I tell them that was a test, right? So this is not Excel. We have to spend hours and hours to get really good at it. Hell, it's not even PowerPoint. I mean, you can learn these tools. I mean, we saw the presentation last week of Gamma and Presentations AI. Come on. They learned it like in a few hours. And look what they got. So that's another thing that, the younger you are, the more likely you are to play with these things. Whereas, the older you are, the less likely you are, because you think it's like, oh, now I'm going down this rabbit hole. I have to learn all this. And independent of my company won't like it. Separate issue. But that's why the undergraduates are, writing music. I got Shakespearean plays, for crying out loud.
I know. I'm trying to think of how I can do something different than other people for the final papers. And I don't know if you're going to be able to come up with something new.
Well, why not ask the bots? We'll tell you.
True. Yeah, maybe I'll have to use my agents to create something that you have to, puzzle you have to go through or something.
Yeah. No, that's right. That's right. It's good. I might fail it,
Yeah. So you said that there are a lot of jobs that we're not thinking about that are going to be gone. And of course, we've seen the speed already. 2.5 years ago, we were just starting to talk in class about, LLMs, chatbots, ChatGPT, what is this? Has everybody started trying to use it? To now, every semester, getting a little deeper, and here's some new tools. Here's some tools you need to try.
Go build your own. Go build your own.
Right. Yeah. So we know, obviously, my main field, marketing, digital advertising, digital media, a lot of that is starting to be replaced and can be replaced pretty easy. Do you think there's still, though, will we need this human overlay of, original thinking and the creativity and the actual, I'm creating this and this is what it needs to look like? When do you think bots, when will AI take that over?
So I love the question, which I get all the time. So wouldn't it be great if humans could be freed up to do all these more creative things, and because they don't have time now because they're doing the mundane things. So wouldn't it be great if that? And I always say to them, so like what? There's always this hesitation. So what's the long list? Pick a field, marketing, finance, I don't care, accounting, whatever it may be. Pick a field and have this discussion. And they say, it's going to be so great that we get to do these higher level tasks. And because we're so better at this stuff than machines.
Right.
And I go, like what? And then there's silence. It's like, well, I don't know. Like they'll say, we can study a dashboard as opposed to creating a dashboard. Okay. So you're telling me that a machine can't study a dashboard? Are you serious? To look for anomalies, look for trends, whatever it may be. I mean, that's like meat and potatoes for any machine to do. So it's like people struggle with that, with what are these higher level tasks? And give me the long list, give me a short list of the things that we do that's so much better than machines will be able to do in 3 to 5 years. People struggle with that.
And for me, it's not about the workflows and those things. So I think you make a really good point. It's about, do I get to spend more time with my family? Do I actually get to read? Do I get to hold a book and read through all these books? Do I get to explore these other business ideas that sit in my head because of my ADHD and my creative brain that wants to go everywhere? Do I get to explore some of those also using my thought partners in AI, right? To help develop them. Like, I would love to get that stuff out of my mind and get it data dumped into a machine that's then going to sort through and go, okay, yes, here are my questions for you, but I'm going to work out this whole system.
That's an interesting answer to the question, what else could I do that maybe machines can't do? But you personalized it. It was not within a particular task. You're saying, I want to use these tools to give me more time to go maybe think about startups or think about other things. And yeah, the machines can help. I love your phrase, thought partners. Yes. So you would work with them. I'll tell you a story in a moment, but that's not in the task at hand. I mean, that's not like, okay, they've replaced me as an accountant. Now, what are the high level things I'm going to do as an accountant, that machines can't do? Well, the answer is there are none. I mean, my colleagues in accounting are like, you just sent out some assassins, but it's, I don't know what they are. Just tell me what they are. They'll say, well, higher level analysis. Tell me what that is. I mean, just explain to me exactly what things you've never been able to get to, right? Because you've been so busy with all these little tasks. And now you're free. Now you said, now you're free. Spend more time with your family, read some books, come up with creative ideas. That may or may not have anything to do with the task at hand. I'm like, that's fine. With your thought partner, that's fine. So I'm in the process. Here's the story. I'm in the process of thinking, I've never done a Udemy course, and I'm thinking that I'm going to do one because I'm so frustrated with, again, we've talked about this the entire podcast, the lack of understanding of AI and how it would impact their business. So this has been a true partnership. So it was me and 3 bots. And I'm saying like, okay, let's talk about this. So what would be the unique message? And how would you send the message? And, I go back, what about this? What about that? Well, maybe not. This is true thought partnership. I'm going to use that phrase. It truly is. And I'm like, these are my creative partners. I wouldn't have done what they're suggesting I do. And guess what? When I mentioned avatars, do you know what they came up with? There should be multiple avatars with different personalities that help deliver the message.
Nice.
That wasn't me.
Yeah.
Okay. That was them. Would I have gotten to that? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think so. I would have gotten to avatars, yes, but I wouldn't have gotten to the idea the pitch should be made by multiple avatars with different personalities who should be introduced as characters. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
So it's like what the bots did for me was, let's make this a movie.
Nice.
And now you've got characters with their own personalities. Let's give them roles to play. Wow. Okay. So now that's far more creative than I might have been.
Yeah.
So,
but even thinking about through things, I was on the phone with one of my partners at Enhanced AI, who I took a class from them. I started building agents, and I had used my thought partner, Claude, to think about through, hey, this is an area of business that a lot of people are asking me to go into, but I want to make sure I can take myself out of the process as much as possible. So here are the categories of questions I would need answered to figure out what the best, to put together a plan for them and figure out what that cost is going to be, and then what's going to be done by bots and what's going to be done by humans, and how much do I have to overlay that? It's not even fully built out yet because I'm actually using it for the class project as well. But I'd already been working on it before. And I showed him the entire format and the decision trees that Claude had put together for me and all the coding. And he's like, our team is going to love this. We wish everybody would have done the work like this before they come to us. And so it's going to be really easy for me to go into the system, whether it's whatever system it is, right? And build out the form and have to do very little lift. I just have to say, here are the qualifications. Here's what I need. Build the form out for me. Then am I going to have a chat, a voice chat, a little avatar, actually lead people through those questions? I mean, I'm supposed to have a call this week with somebody and I'm like, I don't even have this set up yet, but people are starting to refer them to me. And I'm like, that's a beautiful thing. So I do wish that I could just spend my time like, okay, I'm going to dedicate my day today to set this up, and then it's ready to go.
See, I think this whole idea of, I always has this continuum where they start off as assistants, then they go to partners, and then they go to masters, right? So, and that's okay because in some domains they will. So in radiology, eventually, they'll be the masters, and that's fine. I mean, of course, we have to test that and so forth. But in my mind, there's no question that these are partners. And yes, in some areas they'll be masters, but I think it's wonderful. And I think what you're talking about, something interesting that people don't know. You have to get into prompt engineering more deeply, but it's the interaction that occurs after the initial prompts.
Yeah.
So it's, take a look at this. What I love to say is that Gemini thought this was good. What do you think? And it's like back and forth. And of course they're polite, but they're giving insights and they're coming up with different things. And then you can push them, as you know. Well, that wasn't as good as I thought you were going to. I thought you were going to go in this direction. What direction? You tell them which direction and say, well, now I'm pointing you in this direction. What do you think now? All right. I mean, that interaction with 2 or 3 or 4 of them is extraordinary.
And being able to toggle between them, because that's what I can do with my forms is I can say, okay, what does chat 4.0 say versus 3 versus Claude and so I can see what each one would say for a certain use case and decide which one actually is the best tool for that particular project, which is fascinating. And I think most people aren't getting to that, they're not uploading information in their own voice. They're not uploading research that can help the chat become an even better partner. And so that's why we hear, but everything's so generic. And that's why everything sounds the same on social media, because people aren't taking the time, and it doesn't take that much more time.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, we had a policy that came out about how students should or should not use AI. Mm-hmm. And there was nothing in there about faculty. So I wrote back and I said, well, what about the faculty? Are they supposed to use this or not? I was like, because I know my colleagues, they used to be building their own syllabi and then they would upload it and say, what do you think? Now it's build the syllabi for me. Here's what I want to do. Here's the educational goal. Yeah. And I've got 7 weeks or 15 weeks. I want maybe bring industry speakers in, whatever it may be. And it just does it. Yeah. And so now they're like, and they'll take that and then they'll send that to another bot and they'll say, what do you think? How would you improve it? Which is a wonderful way to use the tools. But there's no, and academia's got a problem now with professors' papers not being written by the professors. I mean, there's a lot of issues going on now, especially when you start, tenure becomes the prize. Who wrote the papers? But there's nothing in our policy that says, okay, faculty, you also need to adhere to a policy that says you can do this or not do this, or disclose this or not this. But I just thought that was interesting that there was nothing, all this long thing about the students, nothing about the faculty, because I know my colleagues are using it like crazy. So I'll give you another example. When we get reviews, we have to ask for journal papers submitted. We're supposed to do reviews, and it's tedious because some of the papers are 5,000-10,000 words. I have to tell you that many of my colleagues are putting the papers in. First, they summarize them. Then they upload the summary to chat and say, well, what do you think? Would you accept this paper? I mean, and by the way, go look at all the other papers that are published in this journal and tell me, come on. And you get credit for reviewing papers, being a journal reviewer.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So people are figuring out ways. I know they're figuring out ways to sort of use these tools, and it's only going to explode. I mean, everybody, because the workload is, we do a lot of things. You teach, you do research, you do service. So increasingly, and I think what you were suggesting, and I'm agreeing with this, there ought to be almost like a filter, which I've now learned to do. My first question is, what would the bots think? Right? So someone says, what about this? I go, I don't know. I have my own thoughts, but let's get some other ideas. One of my good friends refers to this as, why would you not ask the smartest people in the room what they think? I'm like, I would. Of course I would. So that's how I see them. But it's happening and it's changing. Yeah. And this is not just in academia, of course. It's in marketing, it's finance, it's everywhere.
I mean, I actually, because when I knew we were going to have this conversation, and I usually don't start with a list of questions, but I have questions that maybe people filled out a form, but I like to just riff and see where we go. And so I usually just look over our website, look over some information, maybe a LinkedIn page, and then we go. But I copy and pasted because I asked Claude for questions, knowing that you were going to be on my podcast. And so I went through a career journey in early innovation. The first question I asked you came from Claude, right? And then the crisis warning system, and then digital transformation leadership, and the fear card with pitching digital transformation. Best opportunities for digital transformation often come from the most distressed companies. Can you share a story about turning around a struggling organization through technology? Academic innovation and entrepreneurship, current perspectives.
You didn't need me to be here.
I could have just asked your avatar all these questions. But I loved that it was very thoughtful because of the prompting I did.
Yep.
I didn't just say, here, you do have to engineer it a little bit, but it's going to get to the point where you don't have to because it's going to know each of us so well. So thinking about your next book, and when is the book going to come out?
Probably in Q1 26. So
okay.
January, February, March of 26. It's in production now. Yeah.
And knowing that things are changing minute to minute in this world, what are some of the points that you think will still be relevant in that time? Just the baseline of how executives need to be thinking about AI and looking at what they can operationalize better, or...
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
What a great question, because everything is a point in time, right? Our classes are a point in time. You mentioned, for example, 2.5 years ago, things are completely different. And I've already mentioned, it's in the book. So where we're heading toward is like the automation of automation. So we have this idea we're going to automate a process and we're going to study it to death and we're going to model it. And that's all going to go away. So what's happening is the most inefficient processes will be identified for us and they will be fixed for us. And we won't have to do the work. The idea of building an agent, no, they'll be built by themselves. The idea of building maybe another agent to help, right? Agent crews, that'll happen when they realize I need some help. Same thing is true of custom GPTs, which will go away. Prompt engineering will disappear, right? Because that's what the humans are doing. I think a lot of this is going to be driven by a kind of sort of a goal orientation. They understand what we want to achieve. And in effect saying, leave me alone, I'll do it. And I will do it correctly and you'll love it. Now go off and read that book you wanted to read and I'll report back, which suggests a larger problem, right? We have nothing to do. But I think that's so the book ends with that. But what the book starts with is you have no choice but to be aware. You have no choice. And to become aware, you have to do certain things. And one of them is you have to be playful with AI. You have to play with the tools and listen to the music. I give them a podcast. Excuse me, not a podcast, a playlist.
Oh.
I give them a playlist. And I say, look, these are the tools you have to learn how to use. They're simple tools, of course, but here's how you have to use them. If you're a CEO, I'm sorry, you have to learn how to use these tools. It's time to, I call it, it's time to play AI. That's number one. So awareness, and then you really have to understand your business processes. Sorry. And you got to prototype. Like we discussed earlier, is you've just got to play with these things, identify the tools. I give them a list of all the tools in the book, all the problems, just all kinds of things. And you have to also break out of, and this is a tough piece, it's a chapter, break out of linear thinking. Okay? Because everything you've been trained to do is linear.
Yeah.
And you have to stop thinking, the world's nonlinear now. Just start thinking more creatively. And I use all these metaphors like, classical versus jazz music. AI's jazz. It's not classical, right?
Yeah.
What I'm trying to do in the book also, it's not the dominant part of it, but I'm trying to get them to think outside the box of their traditional thinking about how to be a CEO, how to be an executive, which is terrible, right? They rarely think outside the box. Again, if nothing's broken, why would we change anything? So yeah, the book goes through all of that, but ends up with, this is a moving target. In effect, I say this in the book, and a year from now, the book will be irrelevant, but it will prepare you for the next one. Maybe I write it, maybe somebody else does, but you have to have foundational knowledge. You have to understand, what we're talking about. What is cognition by machines? What are algorithms? There's a chapter in that. I mean, this is simple stuff. It's presented very simply. What's an algorithm? And I have a lot of examples in there, like, did you ever make something, ever cook something? Well, there's steps, right? And when you break things down. So it's a journey, which is it's not, you remember the series, still going strong, I think, X for Dummies?
Yep.
It's not that, but it's not that, but it's like you really have to take some steps to become aware. It's also got a big chapter in there on talent, because most companies don't have the talent to do this in their companies. They just don't. And that's going to be an issue going forward. Where do you find the talent? Do you buy them? I mean, what Facebook is doing now is amazing. They're offering so much money to people. And I understand that. I mean, you and I might do that, right? Because we need the talent. They're doing acqui-hires. I know companies are doing acqui-hires, and it makes sense because they took a hard look at their teams, and it's like, they think they know about AI, but they really don't. And also, I talk about, there are ways of figuring out how bad things are with your talent. And I also make a big argument, and this is, I think, a really important part of the book, is I talk about sourcing. Where do you find not just the talent that you might have work for you directly, but how do you decide who you're going to contract with, what consultants? And the big pitch I make is open your mind to what you and I would call individual contributors. These are tiny companies that have amassed 3 or 4 or 5, 7 people really good at your subject matter. So marketing, really good at this. And don't be afraid to hire them. And I also say that when you're building your new teams inside your company, maybe after you've done the acqui-hires, forget about teams. Teams, how much research do we need to tell us that teams don't work? How much do we need? So I'm a big fan of individual contributors. Zuckerberg had a great comment. He said that an individual contributor who's really good is 100 times better than any team that you can assemble. And I've had that experience in my career, but I think it's even more important because of the gap between real and, kind of pretend AI knowledge. I think if you can find these people that really know it, yes, hire them, maybe overpay them, which is happening now, but give them a budget and let them go. And back to prototyping, don't say, oh, where's your 20-person team? Do we have project meetings every week? Stop all that, okay? Because this stuff's moving too fast.
Yeah.
And you need to make sure that you've got, really smart people. You're not going to have 100 of them, but if you got 3 or 4 or 5, let them go. And also, again, back to the point about sourcing, don't be afraid to hire the same model, the individual contributors, in a small firm.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is that a lot of these large consultancies are not going to really exist because we won't need all of the layers and the huge expense if we can find individual contributors or small group that knows how to use the tools to replace all of that work.
I actually agree with that. But now we're getting to another discussion. So it's not just the large companies, consultancies, but where are the enterprise software vendors? What happens to that?
Oh, yeah.
You know how expensive these vendors are, right? Whether it's AWS or SAP or Workday or Salesforce. Oh, my God. Every CIO I know chokes when they get those bills. They go, oh, my God. And then I think, well, what do they have? And we talked about this briefly in class. They have your data and they're giving you functionality. Okay, good. And they've embedded the functionality. Good. can I take my own data and can I use AI to create that functionality? Yeah, I can. And people get nervous about that. And the auditors come in and say, oh, no, you can't abandon SAP because your auditing's based. That's like, you know what that's analogous to? Academia is still having the credential, the degree. So the auditors come in and say, well, we need this to do X, Y, and Z. But, if we didn't have to have that credential, the compliance in this case, that, yeah, you could take your data and do all kinds of things. And you can write that code. I mean, you're doing it. You can write that code. I mean, you don't have to write that code. And you can do all kinds of interesting things. Or you could ask these tools to do it for you in 2 or 3 years. So I don't know. I think that we're at another one of these very inflection points about how people are willing, how they're going to source it, how they're going to pay for it, how they're going to be creative, right? I mean, Upwork is now going crazy because you've got individual contributors that now know about AI.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that takes me to another question, which is there's AI regulation supposedly going through Congress, but then we have the president saying another thing. But then we know in Europe, there are a lot of AI regulations, but there's also this whole level of Scandinavian countries, which are so far ahead with technology and just embrace every single thing that happens. Of course, then we have all the major Chinese companies who are now, instead of competition, they're all working together with open source so that they as a country can be the leader. And we have people worrying about data privacy, and we have the GDPR, we have all these other things, and the CPRA and state by state for our data with organizations, but then AI is a whole other level. So what are your thoughts around privacy, security?
And regulation, I guess.
Yeah, regulation.
Right.
Who's going to be the winner?
Well, in terms of regulation, not us, not the U.S., especially given the most recent, right, that came out last week. I read most of it and I thought, okay, so privacy, throw that out. Regulation, throw that out. I mean, what Biden did was kind of interesting, although it was basically what he was saying is there's all these potential problems. Corporations should police themselves. Well, that doesn't usually work.
That doesn't.
So, but now it's like, we're not even going to try to regulate stuff because regulation, we, meaning the current administration, have defined as kind of burdensome, as this terrible constraint. And we have to win the war. And we talked about this in class. It's not one winner. There's 10 different winners. It could be, we're very good at this, but not as good as that. We're lagging way behind on regulation. Do I think we'll catch up? No, I don't. I don't think there's an appetite for it, which means that, the ethical considerations, open source versus proprietary, obviously privacy. I don't think, given the business model that the U.S. is endorsing based on its most recent decisions about regulation, I don't think it holds those things that important.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's kind of gone. I mean, I say to people that, first of all, if you turn your tracking off your phone because you're being watched, and you can do that, you can turn it off. It's like, well, no. Well, what about when, you get all these ads based on where all the other stuff. And it's like, people just don't seem to care. They don't seem to care. Americans don't seem to care about privacy as well. I mean, they know it's out there. They kind of like, in a sense, if you like this on Netflix, you might like this. I mean,
right, recommendation engines.
I know. No, it's silly, right? But people kind of like it. Oh, gee, I found a movie that I didn't find. Netflix found for me.
Yeah. Oh, and I just came back from the UK and Ireland, and anytime I went to any website, I had to click through every single measure. It wasn't just one, 4 different categories. It was, if you click yes for this, there are 42 of our vendors that we'll give your information to, and we'll be able to track you across your train trip, right? I mean, just even on a train website. This one, 152 for this specific message. And so there are good things. I mean, I didn't mind walking through airports and barely showing my passport because I already knew they had all my biometric information.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. I don't have anything to hide. And I also like it for personalization, thinking about dynamic websites and how if we have people's information that are regular customers, that's going to be a really great tool because then they'll only see what they want to see when they come to a website and want to make a purchasing decision. And hopefully then they become a more engaged consumer. But there is this whole other aspect of our data is being bought and sold all over the place. And it doesn't matter what organization it is. Healthcare is one of the worst. at these data breaches and Equifax and all of these kind of organizations. So is there any solution, or is it just too little too late? And
Well, move to California, right? No, seriously. I mean, the response to GDPR was basically the states will do it. And there's 5 or 6 states that have done that. California led the way. And I think that's the answer, because I don't think we're going to you can't rely on the federal government to have a comprehensive policy around what you just described, meaning, way to define it broadly, GDPR. I mean, I think, we're not going to do that. I mean, the rest of the world would look at, well, you guys are so pro-business. And yeah, we are. I mean, how bad can it get when even Facebook admits that's doing some things that could be troublesome, problematic with their users? I mean, there's so much evidence that these social media sites really are harmful, and the algorithms are just written for that purpose, and yet nothing happens. How much regulation has there been around social media?
Yeah. And all the fines that they get in Europe primarily, it doesn't matter because they have the budgets to pay for them.
Well, some of them have been pretty large. I mean, I saw that there was over $1 billion. I mean, I was kind of surprised, and I thought, well, that's not pocket change. Like 50 million is pocket change. When the numbers get big enough, maybe it gets their attention. But to your point, I know where you're going with this. As a percentage of revenue, let alone profit, right? It's nothing. I mean, we'll spend the money. But it's too bad. I mean, I think there's a terrific book that was written, I forget the author, but it's called Surveillance Capitalism. And it is a phenomenal book. It's 2 or 3 years old now. Like it's so long, it's really a big book. And it was written by Shoshana Zuboff, I think, of Harvard Professor Emerita, I think. And it's just a phenomenal look at how we have institutionalized surveillance for commercial purposes. And people keep getting all these phone calls and well, of course, your number is being sold 100 times. And then they go, well, it's kind of odd because, I'll pick up the phone and then they hang up immediately. And I said, all they want to do is establish that it's a working number so they can sell it for more money. And they go, I never thought of that. So it's like, it goes on. And that's a problem. And I guess we're okay with that. I'm not. I would like to see, especially in the era of disinformation, that we have something that says this is not a validated, this is not real. There's no evidence to support this, but I don't believe that's going to happen, especially when the truth panels are being disbanded, right? As they were at X and Facebook. Come on. So I think that's the clear direction, sadly.
Yeah. Well, these are all things that I talk about with my students because we cover all of this in the context of ads and marketing and creating digital media content and user generated and all of these different things. So I love getting your perspective and bringing that in.
Does it get their attention? I mean, are they
yeah.
Like, wow, I didn't know this was happening?
Yep. And we do small group breakouts and they get to explore, find some great examples of privacy websites and some poor examples and find some misinformation, talk about it, bring it back.
Great.
Yeah, they do a lot of exercises. And then I say, here's how to not get LinkedIn to track you. And here's how to not get this other thing to track you if you don't want to be tracked. But we've covered so many topics and I really enjoyed it because you're such a font of knowledge and it's always fun to get your thoughts and what you've seen also with all of the, consulting work that you do on top of the teaching and everything else.
The consulting work is really nice because you're at ground zero and you really get to see the concerns, many of which are legitimate. We've talked about this in class, the security concerns, very real, which is also why people will stay with one stack. They'll stay with Microsoft. They'll stay with Google because they can control it. And that's okay. I mean, Copilot now pops up everywhere if you're in the Microsoft stack. But you really get a sense of the strategy and how do I use this? Do I use this? We talked about academia, all these industries, and they're wrestling. They're wrestling with this. They don't quite understand it. But I've said in the beginning, I don't think that they're fully appreciating the impact it's going to have. I don't think they're anywhere near appreciating the impact it's going to have.
So your book doesn't come out until spring. What should people in these big organizations be doing right now to start even think, because it takes a long time to shift things.
It does. I just think awareness, just, becoming aware that you need to be aware. So I will say to a C-suite, well, who's the AI guru here? And then they always laugh, like nobody. So I think that you start with that awareness. And, whether you bring in an individual, whether you bring in a team, I don't care. Just get aware. And by the way, aware of AI in your industry. So it's not just aware of AI, which is what, professors sometimes do, right? It's just, well, AI looks like this. Well, how important is it to my industry? Why should I care? Because, I'm in insurance. Well, be careful if you're in another crosshair or whatever. And then you have to relate it to their industry. Otherwise, you won't have any impact. And they'll say, are you just some professor or some consultant? No, let's talk about what's going to change your business and your competitor's business. You get their attention and maybe save yourself some money. We talked about, you want them to lean into the message, right? Then you got their attention. Then you talk about it, not for 2 hours. You talk about it for like 15 minutes. Then you come back and do 15 minutes again. And you follow up with maybe 2 pages. That's it. Here's what we talked about. Because you talked about the inability my colleagues want to do 3-hour lectures on video. Have you lost your mind? Nobody will pay attention to that. They'll stop after 15 minutes. So make it 15 minutes. Even that's too long. So that's how you have to treat executives. So that's the first step. And then the prototyping. Just try something. Who do you hate the most? Which organization? I always say this. No, really. Which part of your company do you think is the most incompetent? And they go, that's easy. And they point. Often it's new product development. And I go, okay, let's find some projects there. And then they go, wow, so you don't have to very much sort of crawl, then walk. You can't just go in and say, you're all going to get, steamrolled by this. You can't do that. So yeah, I think that's what companies need to do. And they are, quietly.
So this is a point where I always ask my guests what your favorite quote, mantra, verse, poem, family motto is. And this could be related to our conversation or cannot be, whatever you wish.
Okay, so this is one from The Godfather, right? So, and I use this a lot because people will say, well, can I just get off the hook here? Or can I just, okay, I don't know this stuff, whatever it may be. And there's a line in The Godfather where one of the people, the old timers, is about to be assassinated. And he says, can you get me off the hook, Tom, just for old time's sake? And Tom says, can't do it, Sally. So it's can't do it, Sally. We have to be, and what I'm trying to say with that is that so much of what we do in professional life, I won't go into the personal side, is people get away with things, or they do things, I shouldn't put it that way, they do things for which there are no consequences.
Yeah.
And we do this all the time. So a CEO runs a company into the ground, and they get a pay package, an exit package, which would choke a billionaires, right? So it's like, why is that? So if somebody doesn't make an investment, why do they do it with impunity? So one of the things, and sometimes I use a scare tactic, back to the question about technology adoption is, do you want to be known as the CEO who thought AI was a fad that will be gone in a couple of years? Or do you want to be known as someone who took the initiative and tried some things? So, I like to think there's consequences. That's why can't do it, Sally. We're not going to bail you out here. You made some bad decisions. Now it's time to pay.
Fantastic. And Dr. A, where would you like me to have people go to learn more about you, your consulting work, your over 35 books, 500 articles?
That's my website, andriole.com. That's fine.
Okay, fantastic.
Which, by the way, I'm going to have redone with AI tools.
Ooh, okay. I want to hear all about that.
Well, I'm going to have my undergraduates do it.
Oh, nice.
Can you imagine what they're going to come up with?
Yeah, I might have to have some of them come over and help me.
Yeah, they're crazy. I mean, they learn something in 2 hours and then it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I know that I could ask you questions for hours and just pick your brain. I have the fortune of being in class with you again this week, so I'll get to hear all of the things there. But I'd definitely love to have you back on next, in that Q1 timeframe, Q1, Q2, to see what's up next. So
yeah, the book will be at that time. We can walk through that again. Although I did walk through the most important parts. I think, as I said earlier, this is a moving target. The way we think about AI, as you suggested 3 years ago, completely different than how we think about it today. Imagine 3 years from now. So, you have to embrace that trajectory, which is just it's on rocket fuel. I mean, it's just, you have to do it. No, there's no, you can't do it, Sally. You gotta keep staying. And that's hard for people. You know, a lot of people like to think one and done. Okay.
Right.
Now I know about this. I got it. No, you don't. You got it for maybe a year. I just finished redoing my courses. They're all different now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and my colleagues, I say to them, I wish I was teaching accounting. It never changes. They're the ones in Florida in the winter, not me. I'm like cranking on this stuff.
I know who you're talking about.
No names.
No names, but yes. But even accounting, like we said, is changing. Yeah, we can continue on and on, but I think this is a really good place for people to hear a conversation from somebody who's been there from the beginning and has seen so many different changes and evolution of tech and the things that we need to be thinking about and asking now versus in prior years.
The final way to think about this is that technology, right, has played all kinds of roles in business. And it's sort of like encroaching more and more and more over the years. It can solve more and more problems. Well, now the technology is becoming larger than the business, and business is being redefined by the technology. That's a first. That's a first.
Yeah. Mic drop. Thank you again for being here. And thank you to everybody who's watching this episode or listening to it on your favorite platform. You heard from the best, and I'm already looking forward to our next conversation in a few more months.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrangamplified.com.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F-words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated, forlorn even, like your efforts are futile, and you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people, only to get flooded with candidates who are just fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all that. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. With ZipRecruiter, you can forget your frustrations because we find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day.
Fantastic.
So, whether you need to hire 4, 40, or 400 people, get ready to meet first-rate talent. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/zip to try ZipRecruiter for free. Don't forget, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. Finally, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip.